Today, it is so good to see you here back at LLF 2024. Please put your hands together for yourself. Thank you for being here. So our first workshop is titled From Inspiration to Execution, Leveraging the Power of AI from Design to Production, Marketing and Customer Engagement. Even I am so giddy as to what we're going to learn today because we have two phenomenal speakers as well. So I hope you have your pen, paper, you're ready to take it all in. Put your hands together for our first speaker, Scott C. Eneje, ladies and gentlemen. Fantastic. Thank you so much, and you're welcome, Scott. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like you to do a better, warmer welcome to Malik Afegbua. And to moderate this fantastic panel, put your hands together for Dara Olayebi. So once again, ladies and gentlemen, enjoy this panel session and take as much as you can.
Thank you for being here today. We have two fantastic speakers with us, and I'm looking forward to the conversation and learning from them and from their experience. I would like you to both introduce yourselves very briefly, starting with Scott.
My name is Scott C. Eneje, and I am a product manager by profession. Other than that, I've spent the last decade and a half in technology, and just like every other person in technology, I have swum from graphics design to product design to products to software engineering. These days I spend more of my time working with artificial intelligence to navigate the entire customer experience processes.
My name is Malik Afegbua. I'm a creative technologist and I'm a storyteller across different mediums, film, art, fashion, music, and the likes. And I also explore with artificial intelligence as well to either enhance or inspire me with my work. Good to be here. Thank you.
So let's get into the conversation. The first question I'll be asking you, Scott. So over the last few years, there's been a lot of talk about AI. Everybody's talking about AI. A lot of companies are also incorporating it into their internal processes to basically gain a competitive edge. Before we get into it, I think it will be good to start with the foundation of the subject. Could you explain to the audience what exactly is AI, and also just talk about some of the conversations that surround it? So do you think it's going to replace humans in the long term, or is it just going to improve our abilities? And how do you think it's relevant to the creative and fashion industries, which a lot of our audience are probably people that work in those industries?
First off, AI, artificial intelligence, is simply a computer representation of general intelligence, right? We as human beings are considered intelligent beings because we can think, right? And we can learn. So those two things is what make up the machine. The difference is, unlike us that our thinking and our learning is powered by our brain, this is powered by a series of codes, right? There are confusions between AI platforms, AI-enabled platforms, and the artificial intelligence itself, right? So an AI-enabled platform is basically a platform that is taking advantage of a machine that is learning from multiple sources, right? A lot of the AI things we see today are just AI-enabled. They are not in themselves artificial intelligence. I don't know if that's making sense. Now, the artificial intelligence itself is a simple program that is given access to information. So take a child who, if you have a child, you introduce the child to ABC, and then you introduce the child to numbers, and then you introduce the child to like a novel to start reading. You are actually programming that child to understand a certain language, right? If you give the programming in English, the child understands English. If you do the programming in a native tongue, the child understands the native tongue. This is a machine given the exact same space. So rather than being given a command, we used to define a computer as a machine that is given an instruction to carry out. The difference is this is not given an instruction to carry out. It is given the opportunity to learn for itself. That's the only difference between your everyday machine and the artificial intelligence. As for where it gets the information, it gets it from all of us. Every time you take a picture, every time you publish something online, every time you put on your Google map and you go from one place to the other and you're sending that information to the internet, if the machine has access to that resource, it is learning. So if you say it will replace us, it still needs us. And because we are also evolving in the things we learn, it would need that resource to keep learning.
Thank you for that. And I really like I think that was a fantastic answer. I like the use of the analogy of a child. So I think that flows nicely into the next question for Malik. So you've done a lot of work with international brands, and I would call you a master storyteller. So you tell stories every day, and you use visual design and AI to do that. So clearly you understand the importance of telling a story, and in a way, brands tell stories every day to their customers and to their consumers. So my question here is, how can we leverage AI to create richer, more engaging stories that resonate deeply with our target audience? So I imagine a lot of people here might have their own businesses or building their brands, starting from scratch, trying to connect with their audience. We're talking about the power of AI. How can we leverage this technology to tell our stories better?
When you approach AI as a tool, first of all, that's the first step you need to look at it as. And I'll give an example of one of the brands that I work with, and that was Marvel Studios last year. So we worked on a film called Blade. I grew up watching Blade, so imagine me working on Blade. And the reason why I worked on it was because of the technology I was using. They have 6 different illustrators I work with, and they go through different steps for the different stages. But when it comes to AI, you've broken all those barriers. You can see what you're trying to create even before it's even being created. You can make mistakes without spending money. So that way I worked just for 6 weeks with the entire film. And normally it's 6 illustrators, but it was just me that was working with the entire team, and that was created. That was one. They were thinking about licensing. They were thinking about the speed at which they wanted to do this, and they were thinking about the skill. But how can they approach it? So when they came to me, they thought about creating a database of real human beings that are not actually real. So that way we could make mistakes as well. I had another client that wanted to do a massive photo shoot in a private jet, and that was very expensive to get, permissions for you to even pay for the space. But with AI, that was also possible. So now you could imagine things that normally you could not imagine. You could create things, you could just, experiment. And apart from that, to enhance your speed, for instance, Glenfiddich as well was a client I worked with last year. They wanted to create a TV commercial, and they said they wanted it to be AI, intentionally just AI, and they wanted to know how long would it take for me to do it. I shoot TV commercials, and I know how long it takes for me to do a storyboard and to plan, but that commercial took me 6 hours to create. And that was all over wherever they wanted to use it for. So that was something groundbreaking as well. So personally, I had to find new ways, new pipelines on how to approach a problem using this technology. So that's why, first of all, look at it as a tool. The one is a tool that you could know how to approach it to solve a problem, because it's intelligent, it's smart, it could do things for you, it could make things faster, it could replicate things up onto 1,000 or even 1,000,000 if you want it to be on different variations. So using that or having that knowledge, you could approach it in that way. So depending on your industry, depending on what you're trying to do, first of all, look at it as a tool, then know how to solve that problem. Yeah.
So can you talk a little bit about how to use AI to scale businesses efficiently outside of the streamlining the production process? And if you have any specific examples you can share as well.
I like to compare timelines because that's how you can predict the future, yeah? So I think in the 80s, you had people, maybe it was the 70s, you had people who took knobs to sort of make calculations. How many of you have seen that computer, right? I think it was the 2nd generation, right? At the time, people were scared that the guys who were using, I've forgotten what it was called, to do their mathematics, they were scared that they were going to be out of a job, right? Because those people needed to work hours to make the same math, right? So simple calculations like determining going to space. So I used to refer to myself as a rocket scientist because I did physics, right? All physicists assume that we're rocket scientists. So to travel to space, you spend hours trying to figure out the speed, the power needed, the combustion, all of those things, right? What am I saying? Months, the same mathematics. Then came a computer that could do the same maths in hours, right? Now, it just went up a notch. Nothing so much other than reducing the same time. Because right now, the computers you have today still require you to input a lot, get something, input again, get something, right? What AIs are doing in terms of processes is it's taking away that part where somebody has to continue the loop, right? So a typical process, if you run projects, right? A typical process will require stakeholder interviews, stakeholder management, understanding the definition of the product you want to build, then setting up your team, then preparing a board. It could be Kanban, it could be Scrum, whatever board that you want to use to determine each step in your timeline down to your go-to-market. All of this step require people doing so much. We have AIs today assisting products like Monday.com, so that's one. We have products like Jira that are integrating AI themselves, and there is one I'm going to show later, right? What it does is it takes away the human part of it and says, hey, I have a project. I need to know what I need to do every step of the way. I don't have time to go and talk to 50 different stakeholders. So do the research for me. Find out what is in the market. How can I get this? And stakeholder interview is the worst part of project, right? Customer understanding, trying to understand what your customers want is the worst part because you could spend 6 months. The AI would do it in like 5 minutes. That's how it's helping processes. So 6 months of development becomes 5 minutes, right? So if you have another 3 months of actual work, you've dropped it instead of a 9-month project to a 3-month project. Does that make sense? All right.
Question is also about so businesses and engaging with their customers. Today, online sales are everywhere. E-commerce is a big thing. A lot of businesses need to have a digital presence. So Malik, could you just talk, if you have any examples again, that would be great. Could you talk to us a little bit about just customer experience, and if you have any examples of how businesses can enhance that shopping experience? So from the moment a customer visits a website, for example, and wants to purchase a product, how can we use AI within this process?
It's already been used across many different websites. The chatbots are not people that speak to you. Those are, AI-enabled, platforms. There's also some tools that you use to analyze. They used to analyze the customer experience, like what he just said. So you know how Netflix, all these are websites. Google Maps. So customer when they study your usage, they analyze how to service you next, if that makes any sense. So it's already been in place even before the facade of AI became a buzzword. Another thing was what you spoke about when we were having that meeting about user experience, that you could see your footwear before even wearing it. There are apps, you could just put your camera on your foot and you could see different footwears and just flip. Augmented reality is also AI powered, stuff like that. So thinking about things that you could, implement with it, first of all, that could either analyze, that could count, that could shorten processes, that could reach out as well, automated, like reach out to people, send messages based on your user experiences as well. That's also done and also programmed. But the most widely used everywhere that I have seen is the chatbot.
So I have a few more questions. We've talked a lot about AI, how it can be used, how it's being leveraged currently today and also in the future. And I just want to bring it into the Nigerian context. So given that we're still a developing country, we're facing problems with like electricity, infrastructure, there's a lot of that. Do you think Nigeria is ready to actually leverage the power of this technology? And also if you can sort of talk about it within the context of the creative industry. So that's the first part of the question. And the second part is, what role can we play as individuals and as a community to harness the power of AI?
I like Nigeria for something, right? We don't act like a developing country because we are good at using stuff, all right? It's not something I'm so proud of, but we are great at using stuff, all right? Whether or not we build them. So iPhone 17 now? Up to 17?
15.
15? Okay, where are they going to now? They're close to 16, yes?
Correct.
Right? Apparently, there are Nigerians who are already waiting for the iPhone 16, which is interesting because it's supposed to be the highest technology for mobile devices to date, right? But we are already in a place where that market is open to us, right? I think it tells you that no matter how far technology goes, this market is often open to exploring it. The only challenge this market faces is being part of the builders and actually being, to a certain extent, first explorers. it was shocking when I found out that the Nigerian market does not have a stronghold in the iPhone space just because we don't have so many people who buy brand new iPhones. So they don't consider us a market. And it makes sense, right? Because as far as their sales are concerned, you are not buying from them, right? So it's sort of the same thing. I feel like that's the only challenge, the buying power and the ability to be part of the development itself. But are we open to the technology? Do we use them? Yes, we do, every day, probably more than the next person. I remember I was doing this thing with, so the company I work with is in the US, and I was doing this thing with several engineers who were Americans and Brits, and they were looking for a tool that could do something that I felt like we started using in like 2012. So when they were talking about it, I was wondering, what are you guys saying? They were so excited, like, do you know this can do this? I was like, that's like a 2012. Do you now get how much we use stuff? So I think we can use them. I think we are using them. What we need to work on as a developing country is you solve the poverty problem to a certain extent, then you increase purchasing power, right? You solve the learning problem because we don't take education too seriously as a society. We solve the learning problem and we can become part of the builders. If we play on those two fronts, we should be fine.
I kind of went into a rabbit hole when I was exploring AI technology. I was trying to create things that didn't exist for Africans to show what Africans look like, and the bias is incredible. You know, the stereotype, the misrepresentation is incredible. So let me tell you an example. When I was trying to create the Elder series, putting other people on the runway, I was getting very impoverished images. I was getting very bad images, and I was wondering why. Then I realized it's from the inception of photography in Africa. You know, the inception is not for artistic reasons, it's for colonial reasons. You know, so that means the kinds of pictures that were taken in the past were putting us in spaces that we were subjected or looking, you know, less than what we were, while putting the other people as, you know, superior. That is what the internet learned on. That is what stock photography mostly, if you 2024 type in an African kid on the stock photography website, you're still gonna see an African boy begging for food today. You know, but what's the problem with that as well? That is what AI learned on. So AI trains, it's garbage in, garbage out. So for instance, in Africa now, we don't have a lot of data. We don't store a lot of data. And even when we store data, it's not good news. Go online, it's mostly bad news. It's mostly, you know, yes, that happens in every country, but they have better PR than us. So if we don't think about the image and the PR, the problem that we're going to face in the AI spaces is going to learn from that. And in 10 years from now, we're going to be in trouble and still be on the back front. So the role that we play is that we need to be at the forefront of this technology to learn what role, where do we stand as Africans, as black people? Most tech is not created for us or with us in mind. So why do we have to wait for anybody to show us anything? So we need to be there, learn how to manipulate. For instance, if you type in anything about older people now, on any AI platform, you will always get a great image because I successfully trained the neural network, you know? And that's just a small example. But now imagine a wider page. The role that we play is we need to experiment. We need to learn that this is not going to replace us. It's going to enhance what we're doing. Whether we like it or not, it's going to be there. It's going to grow. Tech always grows. So why not be ready for it? There's something called AGI, Artificial General Intelligence. So that's when decision making will be in the hands of AI. So what if visa approvals and stuff are now in the hands of AI and we're still being biased? There's a problem. So that's the role that I feel that we have to play. Yep.
Thank you so much for your opinions. I learned a lot from this conversation.